I'm Jen Landstrom. Thanks for watching Stitches TV. Today we're going to be making some ruffles. I'm going to show you two different ways to make a ruffle. You can use a ruffle to embellish a bag or a shirt or the backside of a baby's onesie. There's all kinds of uses for them. So here's a couple ways you can do it. First, I'm going to show you how to hand stitch it with a needle and thread. I've got two different pieces of fabric here. This one I'm going to machine stitch and this one I'm going to hand stitch. I've just sewn a strip of fabric and then turned it right side out so that it's got good side on both sides of the fabric. And then I have some thread here and it's knotted at the end, it's doubled over, and then just an ordinary needle. You just start, it depends on where you want the ruffle. I'm going to sew along this seam right here. So that way, when it ruffles up, it's like that, instead of doing it down the middle. When I machine stitch it, I'll do this one down the middle, so you can see the different ways they look. This is an example of one that's been machine stitched. So, okay, to hand stitch it, you're just going to start at one end, and you're just going to do a really big stitch. So you thread it through a couple times, like this, and you're just going to gather it as you go. And so I'm just going to go the whole way down the piece of fabric here and feed it onto here. Pull that through. You can tell already this is kind of what it's going to look like. You could use this at the bottom of a skirt or a dress or something, depending on what you use to make the ruffle, maybe lace or something. And this doesn't take very long, it's not hard to do. It's actually easier to do it by hand probably than with the machine, but it gives a different look, so just depends on your preference. And so just keep going into the end. And you could actually tie this together and make a flower, put a piece of felt over the center and then sew a button on and you'd have a cute little flower. Or if you leave it as is, you just stretch it out to where you want it to make your gathers. And then you make a knot at the end that you just finished with right here. And then you just sew this in place wherever you want it. Otherwise, if you were going to do a flower, you could just make sure you have a long enough piece of fabric, and this may be a little bit too short to make a very full flower, but you just knot it here and then you just connect the two and then you have a little flower shape, and then you just put a piece of felt here and a button and then you have a little flower. So that's an example of a hand sewn ruffle or gather. And now I'm gonna stitch this one on the machine really quick. I'm just gonna do it right down the center and then we'll pull threads on both sides and hopefully it'll come together something similar to that, resembling that one. So you want to set your stitch length really high, and you don't want to back stitch at all, so you don't do any of the reverse stitching that you would do with an ordinary item that you're sewing, because you want to make sure that you don't knot up the end of it. It has to be loose. And then you don't back stitch at the end either. Just pull it on through and pull it out. And then make sure and leave your thread really long on this side and on this side. You have to go find your pieces of thread. And then you're just going to, this is a little tedious, you just have to find one side of the thread. Don't pull both at the same time because they don't work together very well. You pull one side and then as you pull it, it actually gathers by itself. And so for something really long like this, it just takes a little work to get the center gathered, but you just take your time with it and slide the fabric down the thread as you go. And it's a lot tighter than the other ruffle. We're almost there. If you've ever seen the onesies that they have a little ruffle on the back side of them for their bottom. It's really cute. You can actually use one like this and you just sew it down the center like I did and then ruffle it up. You just want to make sure you make it maybe 2 to 3 times the width of the bottom of the onesie, and then ruffle it up like this, and then you actually just stitch it onto the onesie, either by hand or with the machine, whichever is easier for you, and it makes a nice little ruffle. It's really cute. When you finish tying or pulling the gathers together, you just separate the 2 threads on one end, and you just tie them into a knot, and just make sure to pull it tight where you want the gathers to stop. So we'll stop there, and then just knot it one more time so that it's nice and tight. And then you can clip your threads if you don't need them for sewing it in. And then on the other end, you just maybe redistribute the gathers so that it's how you like it. Because once you tie it, it's kind of gonna stay that way. There's no changing it after the fact. And so this is how we want to end this one. So just separate your threads and then tie another knot here and clip your threads. And here you have a little machine stitched ruffle that you can add to whatever you're working on. That's how you make ruffles 2 different ways. Thanks for watching Stitches TV.